at the edge of the red mesa, where the desert wind sang through ancient stone like a warning whispered by the ancestors. Cole Mercer had built his ranch on borrowed hope and stubborn pride. A cowboy hardened by droughts, debt, and the slow erosion of kindness that comes when a man believes survival excuses everything. And on one dust-choked afternoon, as the sun burned low and copper-bright, he crossed a line he never knew existed when he accused Naya, an Apache woman who came to trade herbs for water, of stealing from his storehouse, his voice sharp, his eyes full of suspicion fed by old stories and newer fears. And though Naya stood tall, chin lifted, eyes steady as a mountain pool, he grabbed her wrist in anger, not to hurt but to hold, to demand, to dominate the moment. And in that instant the desert seemed to hold its breath, the ravens stilled on the fence posts, and even Cole felt a tremor of regret ripple through him. But pride is a stubborn beast, and he doubled down, words tumbling out like stones, accusing, threatening to run her off his land, while Naya spoke softly, telling him of the trail she had walked since dawn, of the medicine she carried for a sick child, of the stories her grandmother told about men who forgot that the earth remembers every footstep. And though her voice never rose, each word struck him harder than a shout. Yet he released her only when a distant thunder rolled across the plain, not from the sky but from the ground, a vibration that made the dust dance. And when he turned, he saw them, shapes on the horizon, first like mirages, then like shadows, then like riders, a line that grew into a wave of motion. 200 Apache warriors cresting the ridge, their silhouettes cutting the sun, horses moving as one living river, banners fluttering, spears upright, faces unreadable from afar. And Cole's heart dropped into his boots as the truth hit him like cold water. Naya was not alone. She had never been alone. And his small act of cruelty had echoed across a network of kinship older than his fences, older than his deeds, older than his fear. He tried to speak, to explain, but his tongue felt heavy, his words clumsy. And when the riders approached, they did not charge, they did not shout, they did not draw weapons. They simply arrived, encircling the space with a calm that felt more terrifying than any threat. And at their head rode a man with silver in his hair and eyes that carried both storms and mercy. The chief, who dismounted slowly, as if giving the world time to settle. And he listened as Naya spoke, not with anger but with clarity, describing what had happened, how she had been accused, how her dignity had been bruised, how a stranger's hand had gripped her wrist as if her story could be seized like a rope. And when she finished, the desert seemed to exhale again, and the chief looked at Cole, not with hatred but with a gaze so steady it forced him to see himself, not as a survivor or a victim of hard times, but as a man who had let fear write his actions. And Cole, who had faced wolves and storms, felt smaller than he ever had, because this was not a standoff of guns but of truths, and truths are heavier than bullets. He stammered an apology, rough and unfinished, saying he was sorry if he had offended, if he had misunderstood, if he had been wrong, each if like a shield he tried to hide behind. And the chief lifted a hand, stopping him, and spoke of responsibility, of how harm does not vanish, because it was born of fear, of how respect is not a favor but a duty, of how land is not owned but borrowed from the future. And every word peeled back a layer of Cole's defenses, exposing the tired man beneath the hard shell, the boy who once believed stories could be bridges instead of walls. And in that circle of riders and dust, with the sun sinking and the coyotes beginning their song, Cole did something he had not done in years. He knelt, not in surrender but in humility, placing his hat on the ground, meeting Naya's eyes and asking plainly for forgiveness, not as a transaction but as a beginning. The warriors did not cheer, they did not jeer, they waited, because forgiveness is not a spectacle. And Naya stepped forward, her shadow long in the golden light, and she said that forgiveness is not a door you kick open. It is a path you walk with care, and if Cole wished to walk it, he must start with actions, not words. And so he offered water, then shelter, then his hands for work, helping carry medicine to the village, repairing a broken cart, listening to stories he had never asked to hear, learning that the land he thought he knew had names, songs, and memories layered beneath his fences. And as the days turned, something shifted, not just in him but in the space between them. A fragile bridge forming where a wound had been, and the riders returned to their hills, not as conquerors but as guardians, leaving behind a silence that was no longer heavy but hopeful. And Cole, standing alone on his porch one evening, realized that the real arrival that day had not been 200 warriors but a chance to be better, to choose respect over reflex, to understand that power is not in the grip of your hand but in the openness of your heart. And if this story moved you, if you believe that moments of reckoning can become moments of redemption, then remember that every story we share here is a reminder that change is possible, that empathy can rewrite endings. So, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories that challenge, inspire, and stay with you long after the dust settles.